The following featured presentation is part of the Skywalking Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Collectopolis. I'm Kevin Toft.
I'm Ernie Moreno.
And today we have got a wonderful show for you, but I've got a new background.
That's right. Check that out.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Now, I'm getting ready too excited because the interview was done before the background, but I have some new equipment and I'm able to now actually show some of my collection here. Very excited about this. The wall was a stopgap. It worked for a while, but I think this is a little better because
I think this is a little better.
I like your background, Ernie, and I kept saying, "Gosh, I wish I had a background," because your background speaks pretty well to your video gaming and a few of your other little cool things that you're into. But my background, the posters, they told a story, but they weren't my collectibles. So this is just a small sampling of some of the stuff that I've got, and this just happens to work out well. So with that, what a show we have today, right?
A gigantic, amazing show. I don't know how we pulled this off.
Just lucky. We have an interview with David C. Fein, who is the producer of Star Trek, the motion picture, the director's edition, 4K Ultra in Dolby Atmos. And let me tell you, the things that we talk about today, nothing short of amazing. As you might have read when you clicked on this, if you think you've seen this movie, I assure you, you haven't. This version of the film now is Star Trek, the motion picture now. This is it.
Right. Yeah.
And you're saying, oh, why are you reviewing a movie on Collectopolis? Wait a minute. It generated collectibles. There is a box set with an array of collectibles in it. They've got a special edition of the soundtrack. They have 12-inch figures of Spock and Kirk that are probably some of the best sculpts I've ever seen.
So not only is this a great behind the scenes, but you're going to see some really exclusive behind the scenes images, a couple of behind the scenes stories, and a couple of more little surprises that David was gracious enough to let us see. Not only did we get those 12-inch figures, not only did we get this amazing collector's set, but now we've got a bunch of great stories to go along with this fantastic interview.
This really is the interview of note. This is the one. I can feel you Star Trek fans out there because I'm one. And I know how much this means because it means a lot to me. And I really hope that you guys enjoy this interview.
Oh, I know they will. If they are at least half of the Star Trek fan that you are, they're gonna have their minds blown, honestly.
I wouldn't be surprised if we got new Star Trek fans out of people watching David's work.
Oh, I could see that.
Because if you've written it off and said, "Oh, I saw it when it came out," or I saw it on HBO, this is not that film.
Nope.
You can't possibly be, with the work that he's put into this, it can't possibly be what you think you've seen.
This is a 2022 Star Trek, the motion picture, shot like it was shot yesterday.
Absolutely.
Trust us, guys. You're going to love this interview. Let's get to it.
All right, everybody. Let's say welcome to David C. Fein. How's it going, David?
Hi, guys. Guys, it's after 9 p.m. You guys never sleep, do you?
Not if we can help it.
Collectopolis never rests.
Yeah, right. There we go.
All those we have marathon viewings of the motion picture.
I've seen it a few times now. Before we dive into the your achievement here, I'd like to just give everybody a little bit of a background on you. David is a producer who has produced many DVDs and special. I'll list them out in the below. Some of the things we'll put down there on the YouTube with some of the stuff David's worked on. But rest assured,
award-winning.
Yes. I was getting that.
Groundbreaking,
Award-winning,
Yeah,
groundbreaking.
let's put it this way.
innovation,
He set the
industry
standard
changing.
for, I would say you set the new standard for, and this goes back several years for you. It wasn't just this. You did an Aliens box set. You've done,
The
help me out.
The Aliens Legacy box set.
The
That's
Legacy
right.
box set. Yeah, which,
Oh, wait a second. Before that,
right.
we started with the Alien and Aliens laser discs that are to this day available on the Alien Anthology set. And they were the first successful projects with a studio when it came to special features that gave the market and the studios an understanding that they could make money with those older titles by creating special features. And that pretty much launched it, next to Criterion, who was putting some materials on. But that was one of the first ones that I did many years ago.
And you've also been involved with a lot of audio projects. You've formed some companies and done a few things and been recognized for your achievements in soundtracks and audio stuff. At least that's how I read it.
Gotta love it.
Star Trek: The Motion Picture, the Director's Edition. This is the most amazing collectible. If you don't have it, go get it. This thing is chock full of amazingness.
Well, you still can.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But
I'll be honest, I'm surprised that they're still available. I really am.
So let's go back a few years. About 22 years ago, you went to work for Robert Wise. And not only did you just go to work for him, but you really became close friends with him. But it took you a while to convince him to do this.
Well, it was before the 22 years ago, because 22 years ago is the first edition.
Okay.
But we had, Michael Medicino and I had worked with him on The Sound of Music and Star, another Laserdisc, and did some special features with them and for other projects, and I consulted with him on a number of other little projects here and there that were production related. And we wanted to talk about Star Trek: The Motion Picture with him. He didn't want to talk about it. And it was something that that just took a number of years of talking. Mostly Mike was spending a lot of time with him at that point to get him to start talking about it. And other people had special editions, and this was a film that just was not finished. And I came on as producer. We ended up getting the project going, and I remained friends with him and stayed working with him until he passed.
Was this a sore spot with him because the production was rushed and it wasn't quite completed the way it is now?
Robert Wise is a brilliant perfectionist. What he always said to me was script. You have to have that script perfect. You have to have your story idea perfect. Everything needs to be lined up before you start your film. And it was the mad rush in general that they wanted to get Star Trek into theaters, that I think it was even the first time in his career he agreed to step into a picture with the script not finished, receiving promises from Gene Roddenberry that it'll be done. It'll be in time. Don't worry. And the first problems were that Gene and Harold Livingston, the official screenwriter, were at odds with each other throughout the whole project. And Bob was shooting the film, trying to follow through and make this film be what it needed to be, at least photographing it. And they kept sending in script revisions so quickly and so many times that they were fighting to whose would be the one that would be shot, that they started having to not only put them in by date, but by time of day that they came in, which had never happened with any film, but it was just, the onion skin in different colors, time of day. And Bob would get something and say, I just shot this yet. I just shot this, and, have to toss it and say, this is crazy. And he didn't have his ending. And they were creating as they went along. So that was the first problem that was going on, but they did finally get the ideas down and they did film the film. But that's not where it ended with problems. The next problem is that this was a period right after Star Wars where the world was so excited about visual effects work, and the special effects of Star Wars were amazing, and they wanted to do something different. So someone in the studio hired Robert Abel and Associates, who had produced a lot of television. If you remember anything from the 70s with silver lines in it
Yeah.
for TV and the classic 80s arcades, so that was what Abel was doing. And he was a brilliant man who had a lot of brilliant ideas about how to do the visual effects and make them look unique for the motion picture. And he spent a year developing the studio and developing the ways that he'd be able to accomplish his shots. Problem is, he didn't. He wasn't able to accomplish his shots. That when they went to look, there were no finished shots for the film. And the ideas were sound, but there was no way these guys were going to be able to innovate enough to make the job be successful. So where Bob and Gene found themselves was that they had a film here with no visual effects and a locked-in date that it had to be in theaters because the studio had pre-sold it and booked it into the theaters well in advance at 130 minutes, 131 with credits, so that the theaters could also plan out their day of how many shows that they'd have. And hey, Star Wars was so hot, they were looking for another big thing. So we had Star Trek that was going to come out that was going to be huge, especially because Robert Wise was the premier filmmaker at the time. He was huge.
Pedigree.
He was, people, I've heard people refer to him as the Spielberg of the 60s. He was making a film a year. He did, or a film every few years, and he was absolutely a brilliant and remains a brilliant filmmaker. So a lot of confidence was there, and Roddenberry loved him because his favorite film was The Day the Earth Stood Still. So he was thrilled to have Bob on board as well. So Bob and Gene went to Michael Eisner at the studio and said, listen, we don't have any visual effects. We're not going to make the date. And Eisner, looked at him and said the famous quote of, listen, it has to happen. We don't have a choice. So I don't care if the film has to go out with black leader in it. It has to go out. Which black leader is, where you might see a work print. It says, scene missing. Well, watching the film, scene missing pop. No, with black leader would have not had the text, but he didn't care if it had to go to black was the comment that he was making. And he said, listen, this is more important than anything else. You have to have that happen. And they basically opened the checkbook and said, go do whatever you need to do. And Doug Trumbull was working with Paramount at the time, and he and Richard Urasich came on to look at and evaluate what Abel was doing to see what could be salvaged or not. And they finally came to the conclusion that there was no way that it was going to be able to be finished on time with those guys. So they were let go. Trumbull came on with his team, and even then realized there was no way he was going to be able to accomplish this film. So Doug said, I need help, and looked around to see who was available. And there was this other unknown visual effects artist, didn't do anything anybody really knew or cared about. And his name was John Dykstra, who just came off of, another film that people had heard about at the time, which was called Star Wars.
Well, independent film.
Yeah, little small independent film.
Little B.
So they agreed to split the work, which was interesting because there were some places even in the work that we were doing where we found that they had to cross over, which is interesting because Dykstra was shooting VistaVision, which is a horizontal, unsqueezed frame. Doug Trumbull was shooting 65 millimeter, which is a giant frame, but still not squeezed. And that's how they shot their visual effects. And if you had to cross over, you had to do a conversion from one, literally 90-degree conversion. It was crazy. But they agreed to work together, and each company started 3 8-hour shifts till it was done. So you had 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, constant work to get the film done. And everything you see in the film pretty much is their work. All the big, every shift. Some of the wormhole stuff was before that. Was the only thing that was useful before that, which is also amazing work. But these guys just came in and had to take over. And at that point, Bob was stuck with the editors saying, we don't know, what can we do here? And they trimmed the film down to just the barest story with the intent of, as we get the effects in, we're going to put them in, and then we'll get that time, because of course we'll make it with enough time to go back and trim it down and then pull in the extra scenes that we wanted to fill out the story. And, in addition, what ended up happening was it takes a long time to do visual effects. Yeah. Especially of that magnitude, of that size, even developing them. thought it would be done in time, and literally they were down to the wire. That last reel that they finally decided that they had to lock because the premiere was in 48 hours, I believe, was sent to the lab, and it literally, they usually say when something's wet, it just means that it just came out of the thing and it's fine, but this literally was dripping as they put it in the
developing chemicals.
Yeah, and Bob took the film can himself on an airplane to Washington, D.C., put it under his bed and went to sleep, probably the first sleep he had in a while. And then so he'd be fresh for the next day, and physically carried the film to the premiere.
It's a miracle that the theatrical cut got into the theater.
But that is the fact that you had a brilliant filmmaker who had such experience, and a brilliant editor. I mean, that guy, I say he's a brilliant editor. He didn't ever edit anything important. He just cut Citizen Kane for Orson Welles.
Just no that.
Biggie, no biggie.
just that.
Just these small little projects.
No, Bob was brilliant, but it was the fact of the talent of the people, and one of the greatest things that Bob learned was who to trust in his crew, and the people that he hired, he put trust and relied on. And I'm forever thankful that he trusted me and my team. Mike Mendocino, Jenner Doctorman, for us to help guide him, because Bob also didn't know Star Trek as well as Gene did. And we all worked to, make it the best it can be. And what I was particularly proud of is helping fine tune the edit, and brought in a sense of, we need Kirk to be Kirk. He ended up being too angry. That wasn't the character. I mean, he's yelling at people, and for example, people, Kirk yelling, "You're off," the second time to Uhura. I mean, if Uhura froze any other time, they could be dead. His crew knows to listen to him. It was something that, yes, you have the awe of the moment, but she's worked with him. It wasn't her character either to not hear it. So you had to pull that out, and you had to adjust it in order to get that scene to work. And, Bob always had preview screenings for everything, and he didn't have a chance to have a preview screening. His first screening was the premiere.
No time.
Yeah. And I remember the editor talking about, as the film went on, he just felt like he was getting lower and lower and lower, because he really wanted to have a chance to go back and just tweak a little, because they would put whole shots in. And some of the problems were, for the visual effect shots, they would put them in assuming they'd get back later and tighten it. But if you take the first shot of a visual effect and a last shot of a visual effect, if you go back to the 79 version, you'll notice in the dry dock scene with Kirk and Scotty, there are places where a shot will start and ships won't move for a few frames.
Right.
It'll pop in, and then a few frames in, it'll start moving, because they had the shot. It's supposed to have been cut in after everything started moving.
Right.
And to fill out the whole film, because they didn't know what they were going to have, they had Jerry Goldsmith. Bob went to Jerry and said, "Jerry, I need you to write me a symphony. The scene going into the cloud, I'm not even sure what I'm going to be seeing. So I need you to carry the film at this point and write a symphony for me that is engaging." And he did. And the visuals came in, but it then became the length of the music that correlated to the shots and how they balanced and how it would go ahead. And in the end, never had a chance to put anything back. And because things were still coming in, they spent 4 days color timing the film, which is where you grade it. And when you have 4 days to do it and you don't know it's still coming in, you have to do a basic, simple grade so that whatever comes in can just quickly match it. So what was considered the original right way that it would look wasn't so. It was the quick way to get it done. So this is the first time, because we're working from the original camera negative, that we had the ability to properly color grade the entire picture from beginning to end for the first time.
And
because now this is the chance.
This is why the statement, the best Star Trek film you thought you've seen. And now I want to start talking about your work. So Ernie, spoiler alert, folks. You put the team together, and then what?
Well, Bob wanted to do it. We spoke to him, and he's the one who decided, yes, it would be fine to go back and And what we were basically saying is that the film never had post-production. It needed to have its proper post. So the idea was to go back to the film and reopen post as if he had more time.
Right.
Got it.
Which was the original plan. Now, the thing too is after the premiere, so I'm going to go back to the story for a moment and say that after the premiere, Bob and Gene went back to Michael Eisner and said, Michael, we have to do some trimming. We got to fix those frames. We got to do, just get it a little tighter. And the answer was no, because if word got out that you went back and did any changes to the film, there might be the fear that Paramount doesn't have faith in the production, which could destroy the release. So we have to put it out that way. And these guys who've been working around the clock forever had to look and watch what that was, that first assembly, come out to theaters. And God bless people, it was successful. You know, for adjusted dollars, it was the most successful Star Trek film until the JJ reboot, which benefited from the same benefit that motion picture had, which was guys starving in a desert for anything or shoveled something. In this case, we had murky water that was not clean, and you put it in front of them and they're, yeah, give me all I can have because I just want it so much. That was what happened with the dry spell with JJ. I'm not saying it's the quality of the film's issue. I'm just saying that's why you got something new. People would go over and over again, and they were good movies. But motion picture, for adjusted dollars, that's where it's funny that you hear that that motion picture, you know, people say, well, you know, it wasn't successful, or, you know, it was successful. But then, you know, you can talk about the television version that happened, where they went back for TV and added a bunch of footage. And to make a long story short, that added back in the point of the film, which was a Spock crying scene. And that ended up being the home video version from that point forward. The theatrical was gone. So that other version existed, and that was the version of the film. And those scenes weren't finished. There was still sound on the bridge, and it was a ton of problems with it. They were unfinished pieces that were put back into the film. Yes, there were some lifts from what Bob had, but they were intended to be polished. So you ended up with an unfinished film with now incomplete footage put out into home video as the version of the movie, until they started doing letterboxing again. Then they went back to, well, let's even get rid of those extra scenes and go back to the theatrical 1979 version. So when we walked in, there was a theatrical 1979 version that was out there, but even the things that made the point of the story had been gone for a while. So they started doing DVDs. Here, I'll solve a mystery I don't think I mentioned before, because I asked about it a long time ago. In the dawn of DVD, Paramount was putting out the Star Trek films in a very weird order. When Star Trek first came out on DVD, they started out with Nemesis, which was the newest Star Trek movie on DVD. Then they went to 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and they hadn't put 1 out yet. But isn't it odd that they go backwards through the numbers? Because you'd think you'd want to watch something and you'd want to watch the progression of the story. Instead, they went backwards. And I found out at the time, and I don't think I've ever mentioned this publicly before, it's just funny that we're getting to this, is that I found out why. DVD was new, was brand new. And the idea was, let's use the best transfers we have, which were the newest ones that we did. And as time went in, the thought was at the studio at that time that as time went in and it's growing, we'll be able to get more money to go back and remaster the older ones as we went along.
I understand that. Okay.
And what's funny is that when they hit 1, we were in there and did the 1, and they went 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Going back up again in the multi-disc special editions. So so what happened was Bob communicated with Sherry Lansing and said to Sherry, you know, I really would like to go back and reopen the film. Now, we had budgeted and working with Bob, this was to finish and complete the film. He really felt that it was the film that got away. It was horrible for him, and it was unfinished business. And he really had a hard time moving past what had happened because it was so horrible. And it was personally troublesome because he was judged harshly by the film and never had that opportunity to fix it. So the idea was to say to the studio, I want to come back and finish it. And our goal was for film, was to go back, recut the neg, and do the finished version of the movie. And the studio, Bob was Hollywood royalty. They wouldn't say no to him, but at the time, revivals weren't popular at all. You occasionally had something, but there was really within the studio not a lot of need for a finished negative. So they said, we can do something, but we only have this budget, and it's clearly based upon your budget. It's clearly not enough to do the project. My two passions are computers and entertainment, or entertainment and technology. I at the time was very technically adept, and I knew a lot about how to achieve a lot with a little. And what they said, I thought about it, and again, as producer, I had to evaluate the situation. And I talked to Bob and I talked to everybody, and realized that if we did it in standard definition, we should just be able to pull it off. And so we went back and said, how about this? And spoke and dealt with a few other things. And our thinking was, we know it's going to be marvelous. We would then have something we can show them and say, look, here's your film. Now let's do the film. Let's do the negative cutting because you can see what it's going to be. Let's do the proof of concept. So Sherry said yes. Of course, want to do it, and connected us with Rob Friedman, who was running the studio at the time. And they, based on that, because they weren't going to say no to Bob, they said, okay, let's move ahead. So Bob was happy. We did the new video transfers of the film, which you do on video. That way, you just basically have the elements to you use transfers, and then you have what you have, which also explains why we didn't do full color grading until now, because when you do it in standard def, you're doing your transfer at the beginning, and you don't have all the range to do full color grading, because you're not working from the negative at that point. You're working usually from an inner positive, which was taken off of the negative. And you do your grading in advance, and then we assembled on videos so that it made it so that we had whatever materials we had and could then slightly adjust, but not really get the range that we needed to do. So we did the best we could to improve it, which we did, and then complete it with 100 new visual effects shots with Foundation imaging, which was fantastic. And I told everybody at Foundation when we were doing this, archive your material, and whenever you create something, do it with the understanding that we're going to film. So do it with a high enough quality that everything could be generated at higher quality. So we completed. It was fantastic. We loved it. We showed it to the studio. They were very happy. We had a very nice premiere. Jeff Katzenberg came, and Harold Hart Bennett, and many of the actors came. It was a lot of fun. Bill and Leonard came. It was great listening to them laughing at each other while the film was going on. George Takei, Walter, many people came. It was a blast. It was a great night. And I went back to the studio afterwards and said, hey, Rob, here it is. You can see the film. We want to go to neg to do a new neg. And the answer made a lot of sense. I wasn't happy with it. And that was, DVD is where we make money today.
Right.
So we have it. We're going to go with this. And that left this unopened, this incomplete job of getting into film. So also it was marketed okay. It went to the Star Trek fans, but many people didn't even know the director's edition existed. But we were very happy with the results of where we were based upon such a small scale version. Film is much higher, but disappointed that we didn't get it to film. I met a guy named John Lowry. This guy's a rocket scientist, and I don't mean that as a cliche. John
Literally
worked
a
for
rocket
NASA.
scientist.
He worked for NASA. And I do mean it as a cliche, but I love saying it. He used to work at NASA, and his job was to analyze the moon footage that came back in film. And he studied it. And I don't know about you guys, but when I look at the footage or the photos from the moon, They are the sharpest, cleanest images I've
The
ever seen in my
photographs,
life.
yeah.
The photographs and such. And that was John looking at the negatives and studying and deep scanning and just examining celluloid. And he discovered that by doing deep scans, celluloid was recording more information than the naked eye or even printing could find. That by deep scanning it, that there was actually much higher brightness and much careful darkness. The whole range from incredible brightness to absolute black, but everything in between too. But if you duped it on film, there was no way to present that information. If you printed out a photograph, there's no way to see that information because even the range of those output formats were limited. To create what he did this beautiful manipulation to get these great shots. He then retired with his patents that he was able to keep, retired from NASA and said, well, I have these patents and I've been doing all this work with film. Where do they use film? And moved to Hollywood to found Lowry Digital. And I knew him then, and we hit it off right away the first day that I met him, because there was a period of time that Hollywood liked to say digitally that, oh yeah, film's 2K, everything's 2K. And I remember saying, one of the first times I met him, I was saying, no, it's about 3,500K, 3.5K. And, it's not 2K. And I remember him looking over at me, and it was kind of like lovey eye. Somebody understands, that wasn't going with the story that everybody was saying. It was just nice to see that I understood. And so we became immediate friends that way. And he had wonderful technologies that he was creating. Like he was able to get rid of flicker. He was doing restorations of movies, and it was flickering and images. And where something was flickering, he found a way to just stabilize it so he could get rid of flicker. One of the first time people that had ever done this, because this was in late 90s that this was happening. And I had to be the jerk who would walk in and say, that's great. If it's in a rainstorm and you're in a castle and it's flickering inside and you have a window and outside there's lightning and other things going on, can you quadrantize? So you could keep that spot as flickering as it is because it's rain and everything else, but do everything. And he said, no. Well, there's a company in England that did I was the jerk. But we had, it was fun because we kept playing back and forth, and I loved what he was doing. And I only tell this story because, God bless him, sadly, John died a number of years ago. He's no longer with us. But he always said, because I wanted them to run director's edition for the motion picture through it. And by the way, he went on to do the Indiana Jones films, the Star Wars films. If you remember the Blu-rays of Star Wars, they look incredible. He did the James Bond films. These are for the Blu-rays. And what he was doing, by the way, was that he found all this extra information on film that was not visible. And he had a system through his company where he was taking that information that was not visible up here, and he'd squeeze it into the visual range. And by doing that, everything became sharper because all that extra information was now visible. And it became sharper. And that's why Star Wars looked sharper and the image. And that's where everything just became amazing. But he squeezed it in there. What was amazing was, and it's the thing I was going to say that I don't think I've said before, which is kind of funny, is he always said, give me a test for motion picture. And, I'll work on it and I'll get back to you. I chose one scene. Any guess? The worst thing in the world that needed help?
The flyby the Enterprise? No.
The Probe on the bridge. Lighting scene?
Probe on the bridge.
Probe on the bridge.
Okay.
Oh, right.
Which always to me felt like someone stopped the movie, found an old rusty reel of something, put it into the film, and it suddenly doesn't match for that sequence, then comes back. It was always something that bothered me. So I said, let me give it to him, see what he can do. By the way, love John. He's brilliant, has always delivered in every way that I've ever met him and everything he's ever done. I'm still waiting for it.
Okay.
I knew there was not a lot in there to work with.
Right.
So we never got it back. But I was showing Bob Wise about this. I was saying, Bob, look at this. Imagine, and this is so exciting. Imagine that every movie ever shot on film has more picture, more information, more brightness, more darkness, just all better color, everything that's actually on the film. You can actually say to people, see a film better than you ever have before, and not it be a marketing gimmick. It really is things you've never seen before.
Right.
And that the idea was you squeeze it into the range and then you can put, but it was Bob who surprised me, who said to me, that's interesting, but what if someday they reinvent the wheel? I said, we can't show this. And he said, what if somebody made something where you could see that, where you now could see the range of full here to here? You don't have to squeeze it down because you actually can show it. That's HDR. That's where we are today. That's what HDR is. And I'm amazed that more people don't say, every film you ever saw, see it in HDR, because you'll see things you've never seen before. It is something that's always been there, but you could never, ever see it. Now, because of it, you can. What people don't realize is when 4K came out, when 4K originally came out as a format after Blu-ray, a high def, did you know that it bombed? It bombed horribly.
Just
absolutely
regular 4K.
Horribly.
Right?
4K bombed horribly. It was basically 1080p, higher resolution. People couldn't see the difference. There wasn't anything compelling to upgrade from high def for.
Right.
It wasn't until they reinvented the delivery system and came up with, now we need to do the HDR, and that now the color is and the image is so much better to go along with the resolution.
It's not just doubling what was there, it's revealing the details.
It's giving you things you've never ever been able to see before, and there was no other format that would allow it. So even though they compressed the film down in image quality beforehand and you could see it, that still didn't make fire. Have you ever seen fire that you're sitting in front of look real in a movie? It's so bright you haven't. It's the same thing as complete darkness. You go into a movie theater, what are you looking at? Light on a gray screen. That's what you get. So I was so amazed that Bob had the wherewithal to say, what if they did this? And that started a number of conversations, because I always loved telling Bob about all the new breakthroughs in technology and sound and everything else. And he impressed upon me that don't ever forget that it's the movie that matters. It's the experience of telling the movie, and the movie matters more than anything. It doesn't matter how you get there, get the best experience. And my greatest joy in life is people sitting down and enjoying what's put in front of them and being part of getting that in front of them to give them a great experience enjoying a film. And he said, whatever you do, don't ever let something hold you back. Use every technology in front of you to tell the story, especially with motion picture. It's about the future. So now that we had a time to go back to the negative, it was time to make the film be the best it could be for today, not the best old film presented today in a different cut. No, it's about getting Bob's film, the director's edition, to be the best Star Trek, the best version of that movie that's possible.
So I want to punctuate the 4K for you really quick here, and we'll move on. So 2 people in my life: my son, Theodore, 18 years old, my friend, John, who's a programmer. Okay. And he's more my contemporary age. 2 different viewings in 4K of this film. Both had the same comment during the Klingon approach to the cloud. And the shots of the Klingon battle cruisers approaching. They both said, "Oh my God, is that CG? Is that 3D? No, wait, that's a model." They were both, they couldn't tell what they were seeing. It was so clear, so crisp, all the detail, all the color. They weren't in the same room. 2 people had that reaction. Okay, audience, I challenge you, watch this film, because it's exactly what David described. The detail, it's phenomenal.
Honestly, the detail was mind-boggling, because on the first viewing, I had seen Star Trek films in the past. There's always like, fuzziness, or there's a gradient to a lot of these old films. I was seeing that, and I was like, and I turned to Kevin. We were sitting in his house, and I was like, this looks like it was shot this year. Because the part where I'm seeing the Enterprise in the dry dock, and the whole time that you're with Kirk looking at this thing, I felt like I was just as much wonderment as he was, because I'm looking at this model. I mean, I know it's a model, but I'm looking at it, and there's times where I had this suspension of belief. I was like, I'm looking at a spaceship. Look at this thing.
Yeah.
It was amazing,
Yeah.
those shots. And I could not believe the quality that we were seeing. I just couldn't. I mean, I'm not Teddy, and I'm definitely not your other friend, but I can tell you, just from the first few viewings, I was blown away. I mean, that's just the Enterprise. The V'ger shots, I was just standing there, and I think Kevin might have told me to close my mouth, because I was just sitting there like these immense. I know it was a model, but I'm looking at this, and it's almost cathedral in nature, the way that this comes up and everything. And then when we watched the behind the scenes, and we had a shot comparison where they were so dark you couldn't see anything, and then all the detail that came in now is like, I guess that's the other thing. Only version I ever want to see of this film.
Yeah, same here, because one of the things I had with the theatrical and the TV version is, the deeper we got into V'ger, at some point I was just lost. I couldn't tell really where I was, and because it was Star Trek, I just let it go, and I'm just going to go with the flow here. In this version of the film, I actually can tell where I'm at, and when we make it to the point where they go out and make contact with V'ger, I have a sense of where I am throughout this path on the ship now, especially now since I have one of these.
I'm surprised you didn't go grab that while we were watching it, and we're like, we're right here.
But no, it's so crystal clear now. Not just visually, but the story. I can track where I am in the story now. I go, oh, we're here. Okay, we're making a turn. Okay, we're dropping down. Okay, now we've moved through. Well, I didn't know there was anything missing. I thought this was just it, and maybe they just up-resed it, and I've seen the movie. No. So now with this one, if that's going through your head, I'm here to testify you're wrong, because you get a true sense of the journey, and you can the ending makes sense, like you said.
Here's how I can guarantee you that that's the truth. I'm watching it for really the first time, because I've only seen the motion picture maybe in sparing, but this time I'm watching it with Kevin. After the dry dock scene, every other 30 minutes, or every like 30 seconds to a minute, Kevin's shouting like, that makes sense now. I haven't seen that before. The part where he started yelling, where they're on top of the Enterprise.
Oh yes.
And Kevin just shouted. He's like, "Oh my God, that looks amazing!" And like, yes, I'm telling you, it felt like Kevin was watching a new movie.
Yes, because every time we got to that matte painting where they go out on the saucer section, I just used to cringe. And bless you, David C. Fein.
You mean when the Enterprise pulls up to the flattened brick wall?
Yes. Oh, look, I know the person doing that painting was under a lot of pressure. I understand all the constraints, but my gosh,
it's my understanding that was the first painting, but there was another painting that they were going to use, but didn't get a chance to put it in. They realized it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
But here's the funny part about that sequence anyway, and that's that was what we ended up doing is what was originally planned. That's a place where we just went back to what the plan was. And I recently posted this an advertisement for a book from 1979 that had the crew walking up a little bridge going across, and I said, wow, it took only 43 years for the advertisement for this book to be what's in the film.
I'm telling you,
it never made
that
sense.
whole sequence, Kevin paused it. He went to go get the special edition, and he said, "Ernie, you don't understand. It used to go from here to here," and I was like, "What's happening?"
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I'm seeing this is like, of course this makes it. This is exactly how it should go. He's like, "But that wasn't there before." Like he couldn't force it into my head hard enough that wasn't there before, and it just brought so much joy to see it. He had to pause it and show me, and oh man,
and everybody I've shown it to, including, I can't even believe I got my 18-year-old son to sit down and watch this. That, my friends, is an achievement in this day and age with this technology. It's like, because they're like, old stuff. I want this new anime or whatever. No, I got him. Got him with this.
This is a 2022 movie.
That's
it really
exactly
is.
it.
And what's really interesting is I've come to terms with the fact that what it really is a film that was shot in 1979 for today, because it's actually more relevant today than it ever would have been in 1979. I often like talking about, one of the key points of the film is that technology without humanity is dry and barren and is horrible. You need to have humanity as part of everything. And the greatest technological advancement of 1979 was that we could now dial by pushing on a button as opposed to the rotary number. And that's, yes, it was personal. We could talk on a telephone. It was that personal connection. But that isn't something that people could quite understand as much, is my guess. But today, when people are walking around with these and it's their social life, their whole world, to imagine this without the humanity part of it means so much more. And it's amazing, and I'm thrilled to say that so many people are seeing it for the first time, and they're seeing the film it was supposed to be. And I give this credit constantly to Doug Drexler, which I heard through the grapevine that he's one of the people who works on Star Trek today and has for many years worked on it. And he made a comment that's really stuck with me. And he said, and I thought it was beautiful, he said, "This is the film we always wanted this film to be." It was so much ambition that it was just hopeful that it would be this. And I'm so touched by that. It was something really that precious.
Well, that's a big deal coming from Doug Drexler, because he's a visionary in my, he's a great designer. So for him to make that comment, go ahead and Google him, folks. But I can tell you right now, once you understand who Doug Drexler is, the weight of that comment is massive coming from him. So, we've had it from an 18-year-old who all the way up to, I would consider a Star Trek expert, and everybody in between weigh in on this. Don't forget to visit us on our Facebook group page. Like us, tell your friends. We would love to hear your feedback. You can comment on the show. You could ask a question, or even leave us a direct message, or tweet us at SkywalkingPod and use the hashtag Collectopolis. We are part of the Skywalking Network,
Skynet,
where you can also find other great shows like the Neverland Clubhouse, Star Wars Ologies, Talking Apes, Totally Tell Me Everything, the Max FX Podcast, and the flagship show, Skywalking Through Neverland.
And look for more shows on the Skywalking Network YouTube channel, like Today in Star Wars History, your daily Star Wars history lesson.
Well, that's it for this episode. I'm Kevin Toff.
I'm Ernie Moreno.
And thanks for joining us on Collectopolis.